TeraFlex HD ball joints for the JL Wrangler and the JT Gladiator front axle are an upgrade from the factory ball joints. Constructed with all metal internals, the TeraFlex HD ball joints are adjustable and can handle the increased load of oversized tires. Please watch this video in its entirety before installing TeraFlex's HD ball joints. It is vital that they are installed correctly. To install the TeraFlex HD ball joints, you will need a ball joint press kit. The one we use in this video is made by OTC Tools. However, any ball joint press designed for Jeeps or trucks will work. Begin the installation process by removing the front wheels. Remove the oil from the front differential. Remember to reinstall the drain plug once the differential is empty. Disconnect the steering stabilizer from the tie rod. Disconnect the drag link from the knuckle, and then remove the tie rod. The joints on these will sometimes come out easily, but if not, a few good taps on the knuckle with a hammer will usually get the joint loose. Hang up the drag link so it stays out of the way. Disconnect the track bar from the axle. This will allow the axle to drop straight down, providing clearance for the ball joint press tool. Remove the brake caliper from the rotor and hang it up out of the way, but do not hang it from the brake line. If you hang it from the front control arm like we do, disconnect the brake line bracket just in front of the shock. This will keep the brake line from bending at a sharp angle. Remove the rotor. It is held in place by a small bolt. Remove the backing plate. Disconnect the front ABS speed sensor from the wheel hub. Disconnect the ABS line bracket from the axle. Because this is a newer vehicle, we were able to just remove the bolts holding the hub to the knuckle and pull the hub out. It's probably not going to be that easy since you are likely installing these on a vehicle that has seen a few more miles. Remove the cotter pins on the factory ball joints. Loosen the castle nuts until they have just a few threads left so they can catch the knuckle when it separates from the ball joints. Use a hammer or an air hammer to separate the knuckle from the ball joints. Hit the knuckle near the ball joints. The knuckles are usually pretty stuck, so you have to hit them quite a bit. As you remove the knuckle, you'll notice there's a sleeve on the upper end that can sometimes fall out. Make sure you don't lose this sleeve and that it is there when you reinstall the knuckle. Once the knuckle is off, we need to remove the ball joints. Depending on the tool you use, the process you follow may be a little different for both removal and installation. Remove the upper ball joint first, and then the lower. The most important thing to do when removing the ball joints is to make sure that the tools are lined up so you don't damage the axle. Once you have the ball joints removed, clean up the area around the ball joint openings. The TeraFlex HD ball joints have identical housings. They have been marked on the end of the studs with a U for the upper and an L for the lower. If there is any confusion, know that the lower ball joint has a longer stud than the upper. Before installing the ball joints, take a moment to correctly orient the ball joints. The zerks on the upper ball joint should point towards where the wheel will go, and the lower ball joint should have a grease zerk pointing towards the axle. This is critical to ensure that you can properly grease the ball joints. Mark the center line of the ball joints. Do the same for the axle to ensure you don't accidentally rotate the ball joint while you are installing it. Using grease or anti-seize, lubricate the opening. Install the lower ball joint first. Double check to make sure that your marks are aligned before you begin pressing in the ball joint. It's important to note that you can't really remove the ball joints without risking damage to the grease ports. So make sure everything is correct before you press in the ball joint. Install the upper ball joint in the same manner. Again, make sure that everything is correct before you press it in. Unfortunately, the impact gun didn't quite fit with our tool, so this one got tightened the old-fashioned way. Install the snap ring onto the upper ball joint. Only the upper ball joint gets a snap ring. Install the grease zerks. Tighten them until snug. Don't over tighten because they can break off easily. There are 2 on each ball joint to provide easy access under the vehicle for greasing. Reinstall the knuckle onto the ball joints. You will notice we put anti-seize on the pins. This is optional, but in the event that you plan on removing the knuckle again, you will be glad you did. Initially tighten the castle nut on the lower ball joint to 15 foot-pounds. Final tighten the nut on the upper ball joint to 55 foot-pounds. Final tighten the lower nut to 33 foot-pounds. Install the cotter pins. If the hole on the cotter pin doesn't line up with the slot on the castle nut, then tighten the nut a little more. Never loosen the nut to get the cotter pin in. Reinstall the wheel hub. Again, we added anti-seize here, but this is optional. Support the shaft as you insert it into the axle. Be aware there is an internal seal. Supporting the shaft will help prevent damage to the seal. If you do damage the seal, you must replace it before continuing. As a side note, this is a good opportunity to replace the seals should you need to do that. Reinstall the long bolts that connect the hub to the knuckle. Reinstall the ABS speed sensor onto the wheel hub. Reinstall the backing plate. Reinstall the rotor. Connect the drag link to the knuckle. Reinstall the tie rod. Reconnect the steering stabilizer to the tie rod. You can attach the track bar while the vehicle is in the air, but wait to final tighten the hardware until the vehicle is back on the ground. Reinstall the calipers. If you remove the brake line bracket, reattach that. Refill the differential with the appropriate gear oil for your vehicle. Replace the wheels and return the vehicle to the ground. Add grease to the ball joints until it begins to seep out of the bottom of the ball joint. Add grease to all 4 ball joints at every oil change interval. The ball joints have a preload that's set in the factory. If at any time the ball joints fall out of factory specifications, the ball joints can be tightened. The process for doing this is very simple. Loosen the set screw. Use the provided tool attached to a torque wrench. Tighten the ball joint to 70 inch-pounds, then tighten down the set screw.